MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry who you love. They promote authoritarian leaders and they fan the flames of political violence that are a threat to our personal rights, to the pursuit of justice, to the rule of law, to the very soul of this country.
Welcome back to Wake Up America. President Biden delivering a primetime address from Philadelphia last night, billed as the battle for the soul of the nation.
Yeah, his speech stirring fresh controversy over whether it will create further political divides. Newsmax chief White House correspondent James Rosen has more from the White House North Lawn. Good morning, James.
Good morning to you guys. It was an extraordinary event, one for which the president drew on many of the trappings of the presidency, from the use of the Marine Band and the placement of 2 U.S. Marines behind him for the entirety of his 24 remarks, which were delivered on federal soil in the National Independent Historic Park. I'm sure that Mr. Biden's critics will see this as a fairly crass effort at kicking off the midterm election cycle, using the trappings of incumbency to do so, trying to portray himself and his party as the very embodiment of safe and democratic norms and institutions, and their opponents, specifically Donald Trump and what they call MAGA Republicans, as threats to American democracy and freedom. At the same time, it struck me that the speech represented a kind of concession on the part of the president, that an idea, a concept that he and his aides have been promoting and his allies have been promoting for months really hasn't been effectively fleshed out. And therefore hasn't been a case of effective messaging on their part. And that is this message of the threat posed by MAGA Republicans. Just a couple of days ago in the White House press briefing, ahead of this speech, the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, was asked to identify who exactly are the MAGA Republicans? How many of them are there? Are they prevalent in the Republican Party or a minority of the Republican Party? Is it? And the answers came fitfully out of Jean-Pierre. Originally, she was saying the president has been very targeted, that this is the leadership of the Republican Party. Then a few seconds later, she was saying, well, it goes beyond the leadership, and he's been clear. This is a large portion of their electorate. Then she went on to say, if you support an authoritarian like the former president, then you belong in this category. So the circle widened in Jean-Pierre's telling just over a course of a couple of minutes, from the leadership of the Republican Party to a large portion of its rank and file voters to any one of the 74 million who voted for Mr. Trump and would do so again. So this speech last night was an effort by the president to put greater definition to this whole concept they've been somewhat ineffectively promoting over the last several months. And so we heard from him, for example, for the first time, not every Republican, and he said not even a majority of the Republican Party is who he's been talking about. That was an important concept for him to get across. And so we'll see how effective it was in terms of its midterm implications. It very clearly was a political speech, with the president at one point exhorting the audience to vote, 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 but it was billed as an official event.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a very interesting speech. A lot of people talking about it. James Rosen, thank you so much. Let's keep this conversation moving with President Biden's Soul of the Nation speech and whether or not it delivered. Our next guest is a man who knows politics and the Keystone State.
Joining us now is former Pennsylvania Senator, senior advisor at the Convention of States, and Newsmax contributor Rick Santorum. And back with us in studio in New York City, the former Lieutenant Governor of New York, Newsmax contributor Betsy McCoy. Good morning, Rick. Great to have you here with us. And of course, Betsy is back. But Rick, have to ask you right out of the gate, your reaction to the president's speech, and not just the words, but also the imagery, the entire set.
Yeah, one of the low points, and there have been so many, maybe the lowest point in the Biden presidency, to have Marines standing behind you giving a crass political speech. I don't know what the Defense Department's thinking. I have no idea why you would have something. I understand the imagery, but and then saying that a big chunk of America is a threat to democracy, putting them on the target list with Marines standing behind you. This kind of imagery is actually very frightening, given what we've seen from the IRS and the FBI and other parts of the government being weaponized against blocks of Americans. So I thought this was a dangerous speech for him last night. I think this was a counterproductive speech for him last night. This is a speech from someone who's afraid, someone who's desperate, and someone who is projecting upon his opponents things that he's doing. I mean, he says that Republicans are don't stand for the rule of law, as he spends $1 trillion unconstitutionally to bail out folks who are voters of his. He opens borders and again doesn't pay attention to the rule of law. I mean, the things that he says in this speech are all things that Democrats are doing that are a threat to democracy, but yet he accuses Republicans of wanting to do these things with Marines standing behind them. Yeah, this is disgusting. This is disgraceful.
Rick, he's supposed to be the unifier, right? Remember, he said he wanted to unify the country, yet...
He wants to unify Democrats.
Yeah.
That's what he wants to unify. He doesn't want to unify the country. It's obvious. He wants to divide the country. He's going out there saying, vote these are people who are a threat. Again, when you call someone a threat to democracy with Marines standing behind you, this is not a casual thing. This is something that is an extremist, authoritarian type of speech that I hope will backfire on.
I agree totally with that perspective. This is a terrifying speech. Really, only twice before in all of American history has one political party pointed the finger at the other one and said, you don't have a right to exist. You are not part of the American system. Obviously, once in 1800 and again just before the Civil War. But with those two exceptions, Americans have always agreed. We have two political parties. They debate, they disagree, and then they come back at the next election and do it again. Each one is legitimate. But Biden is pointing his finger at millions and millions of Americans and saying, you're terrorists. You are a threat to our country. And people ought to be scared, as Rick pointed out, with the expansion of the IRS, with the raids by the FBI, and now this. It's very unsettling.
Rick, when we have spoken before, you have said that you anticipate that the red wave that has been being discussed might be a little bit more of a red trickle. Do you think that the president's speech, these words, everything kind of you described here as one of the lowest points of his presidential career could serve to potentially unite the GOP even more so and really rally the base to get out and vote?
When Joe Biden is talking and he is the center of news, Democrats' poll numbers go down. His poll numbers go down. When Donald Trump is off the stage and Joe Biden is what we're talking about, Republicans win. I'm hopeful that that message gets through to the folks down in Mar-a-Lago, that they realize that having discussions about what's going on with Donald Trump and Trump saying he might run and all those things get pushed aside, and you go back to the 2020 election when Donald Trump basically blew himself up on the first debate by not letting Joe Biden talk and cutting him off. His poll numbers tanked. Yeah. When he let Biden talk in the second debate, he recovered and darn near won the election. Yeah. Let Biden be the center of attention, not you, Mr. President, President Trump.
Let him talk. We'll see, though, about former President Trump going to have his rally in Pennsylvania this weekend. We'll see what happens. Rick Santorum, Betsy McCoy, always great to have you. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to join you, Rick.